Act 1 of The Magistrate by Arthur Wing Pinero. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The persons of the play:
Mr. Poskett,
Magistrate of the Mulberry Street Police Court,
read by Larry Wilson.
Agatha Poskett, read by Sonia.
Cis Farringdon,
her son,
read by Thomas Peter.
Charlotte Verinder, her sister,
read by Lian Ya.
Colonel Lucan, read by Son of the Exiles.
Captain Horace Vale, read by Nick Bulker.
B.T. Tomlinson, read by Avai.
Mr. Bullamy,
Magistrate of the Mulberry Street Police Court,
read by Alan Mapstone.
Achille Blonde, read by Todd.
Isidore, read by Vivian Weaver.
Mr. Warmington, read by Vivian Weaver.
Inspector Meziter, Metropolitan Police, read by Tricia G.
Sergeant Lugg,
Metropolitan Police,
read by Mike Harris.
Constable Harris,
Metropolitan Police,
read by Sandra.
Wyke, the Butler, read by Beth Thomas.
Popham, read by Amy Deutschler.
Stage directions read by Lynette Geisel. The Magistrate, the first act, the family skeleton. The scene represents a well-furnished drawing-room in the house of Mr. Poskett in Bloomsbury. Beatty Tomlinson, a pretty, simply dressed little girl of about 16, is playing the piano, as Cis Farringdon, a manly youth wearing an Eton jacket, enters the room.
Beatty.
Cis, dear, dinner isn't over, surely?
Not quite. I had one of my convenient headaches and cleared out.
Taking an apple and some cob nuts from his pocket and giving them to Beatty.
These are for you, dear, with my love. I sneaked them off the sideboard as I came out.
Oh, I mustn't take them.
Yes, you may. It's my share of dessert. Besides, it's a horrid shame you don't grub with us.
What? A poor little music mistress?
Yes. They're only going to give you 4 guineas a quarter. Fancy getting a girl like you for 4 guineas a quarter. Why, an 1/8 of you is worth more than that. Now peg away at your apple.
Produces a cigarette.
There's company at dinner, isn't there?
Munching her apple.
Well, hardly. Aunt Charlotte hasn't arrived yet, so there's only old Bullamy.
Isn't old Bullamy anybody?
Old Bullamy. Well, he's only like the governor, a police magistrate at the Mulberry Street Police Court.
Oh, does each police court have 2 magistrates?
Cis, proudly.
All the best have 2.
Don't they quarrel over getting the interesting cases? I should.
I don't know how they manage. Perhaps they toss up who's to hear the big sensations. There's a Mrs. Beldam who is rather a bore sometimes. I know the Gov always lets old Bullamy attend to her, but as a rule I fancy they go half and half in a friendly way.
Lighting cigarette.
For instance, if the governor wants to go to the Derby, he lets old Bullamy have the Oaks, and so on, see?
He sits on the floor, comfortably reclining against Beatty, and puffing his cigarette.
Oh, I say, Cis, won't your mamma be angry when she finds I haven't gone home?
Oh, put it onto your pupil. Say I'm very backward.
I think you are extremely forward. In some ways.
Biting the apple and speaking with her mouth full.
I do wish I could get you to concentrate your attention on your music lessons. But I wouldn't get you into a scrape.
No fear of that. Ma's too proud of me.
But there's your stepfather.
The dear old governor. Why, he is too good-natured to say boo to a goose. You know, Beatty, I was at school at Brighton when Ma got married. When she got married the second time, I mean. And the governor and I didn't make each other's acquaintance till after the honeymoon.
Oh, fancy your stepfather blindly accepting such a responsibility.
Gives him a cub nut to crack for her.
Yes, wasn't the governor soft? I might have been a very indifferent sort of young fellow for all he knew.
Having cracked the nut with his teeth, he returns it to her.
Thank you, dear.
Well, when I heard the new dad was a police magistrate, I was scared. Said I to myself, if I don't mind my P's and Q's, the governor, from force of habit, will find me all my pocket money. But it's quite the reverse. He's the mildest, meekest.
The door opens suddenly.
Look out, someone coming.
They both jump up, Beatty scattering the nuts that are in her lap all over the floor, Sis throwing his cigarette into the fireplace, and sits at the piano, playing a simple exercise, very badly. Beatty stands behind him, counting.
1 and 2 and 1 and 2.
Wyke, the butler, appears at the door and mysteriously closes it after him.
Master Sis. Master Sis.
Hello, what is it, Wyke?
Wyke, producing a decanter from under his coat.
The port wine you asked for, sir. I couldn't get away before. The old gentlemen do hug the port wine so.
Got a glass?
Yes, sir.
Producing wine glass from his pocket and pouring out wine.
What ain't missed ain't mourned, eh, Master Sis?
Sis, offering wine.
Here you are, Beatty dear.
The idea of such a thing! I couldn't.
Why not?
Oh, if I merely sipped it, I shouldn't be able to give you your music lesson properly. Drink it yourself, you dear, thoughtful boy.
I shan't. It's for you.
I can't drink it.
You must.
I won't.
Oh, you're disagreeable.
Not half so disagreeable as you are.
They wrangle. Wyke, to himself, watching them.
What a young gentleman it is, and only 14. 14, he behaves like 40.
Sis chokes as he is drinking the wine. Beatty pats him on the back.
Why, even Cook has made a ash of everything since he's been in the house, and as for Popham...
Seeing someone approaching.
Look out, Master Sis.
Sis returns to the piano, Beatty counting as before, Wyke pretending to arrange the window curtains, concealing the decanter behind him.
1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and...
Enter Popham, a smart-looking maidservant.
Wyke, where's the port?
Wyke, vacantly.
Port?
Port wine. Mrs. is furious.
Port?
Popham, pointing to the decanter.
Why, there! You're carrying it about with you.
Why, so I am. Carrying it about with me. Shows what a sharp eye I keep on the governor's wines. Carrying it about with me. Mrs. will be amused.
Goes out. Popham, eyeing Sis and Beatty.
There's that boy with her again. Minx. Her 2 hours was up long ago. Why doesn't she go home? Master Sis, I've got a message for you.
Sis, rising from the piano.
For me, Popham?
Yes, sir.
Quietly to him.
The message is from a young lady who up until last Wednesday was all in all to you. Her name is Emma Popham.
Sis, trying to get away.
Oh, go along, Popham.
Popham, holding his sleeve.
Ah, it wasn't go along, Popham, till that music girl came into the house. I will go along, but cast your eye over this before you sleep tonight.
She takes out of her pocket handkerchief a piece of printed paper, which she hands him between her finger and thumb.
Part of a story in Bow Bells called Jilted, or Could Blood Atone? Wrap it in your handkerchief. It came round the butter.
She goes out. Sis throws the paper into the grate.
Bother the girl. Beatty, she's jealous of you.
A parlour maid jealous of me, and with a bit of a child of 14.
I may be only 14, but I feel like a grown-up man. You're only 16, there's not much difference, and if you will only wait for me, I'll soon catch you up and be as much a man as you are a woman. Will you wait for me, Beatty?
I can't. I'm getting older every minute.
Oh, I wish I could borrow 5 or 6 years from somebody.
Many a person would be glad to lend them.
Lovingly.
And oh, I wish you could.
Sis, putting his arm round her.
You do? Why?
Because
Sis, listening.
Look out, here's the mater.
They run to the piano. He resumes playing, and she counting as before.
1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2.
Enter Agatha Poskett, a handsome, showy woman of about 36, looking perhaps younger.
Why, sis, child, at your music again?
Yes, ma, always at it. You'll spoil my taste by forcing it if you're not careful.
We have no right to keep Miss Tomlinson so late.
Oh, thank you, it doesn't matter. I am afraid we're not making very great progress.
Sis, winking at Beatty.
Well, if I play that again, will you kiss me?
Beatty, demurely.
I don't know, I'm sure.
To Agatha Poskett.
May I promise that, ma'am?
Sits in the window recess. Sis, joining her, puts his arm round her waist.
No, certainly not.
To herself, watching them.
If I could only persuade Aeneas to dismiss this protégé of his, and to engage a music master, it would ease my conscience a little. If this girl knew the truth, how indignant she would be! And then there is the injustice to the boy himself, and to my husband's friends who are always petting and fondling and caressing what they call a fine little man of 14. 14! Oh, what an idiot I have been to conceal my child's real age!
Looking at the clock.
Charlotte is late. I wish she would come. It will be a relief to worry her with my troubles.
Mr. Poskett talking outside.
We smoke all over the house, Bellamy. All over the house.
I will speak to Aeneas about this little girl at any rate.
Enter Mr. Poskett, a mild gentleman of about 50, smoking a cigarette, followed by Mr. Bellamy, a fat, red-faced man with a bronchial cough and general huskiness.
Smoke anywhere, Bellamy, smoke anywhere.
Not with my bronchitis, thank ye.
Mr. Poskett, beaming at Agatha Poskett.
Ah, my darling.
Mr. Bellamy, producing a small box from his waistcoat pocket.
All I take after dinner is a jujube. Sometimes 2.
Offering the box.
May I tempt Mrs. Poskett?
No, thank you.
Treading on one of the nuts which have been scattered over the room.
How provoking! Who brings nuts into the drawing-room?
Miss Tomlinson still here?
To Beatty.
Don't go, don't go. Glad to see Sis so fond of his music. Your sister Charlotte is behind her time, my darling.
Her train is delayed, I suppose.
You must stay and see my sister-in-law, Bellamy.
Pleasure, pleasure.
I have never met her yet. We will share first impressions. In the interim, will Miss Tomlinson delight us with a little music?
Mr. Bellamy, bustling up to the piano.
If this young lady is going to sing, she might like one of my jujubes.
Beatty sits at the piano with Sis and Mr. Bellamy on each side of her. Mr. Poskett treads on a nut as he walks over to his wife.
Dear me, how come nuts into the drawing-room?
To Agatha.
Of what is my darling thinking so deeply?
Treads on another nut.
Another. My pet, there are nuts on the drawing-room carpet.
Yes. I want to speak to you, Aeneas.
About the nuts?
No, About Miss Tomlinson, your little protégée.
Ah, nice little thing.
Very, but not old enough to exert any decided influence over the boy's musical future. Why not engage a master?
What, for a mere child?
A mere child? Oh.
A boy of 14.
Agatha Poskett, to herself.
14.
A boy of 14 not yet out of Cerney's exercises.
Agatha Poskett, to herself.
If we were alone now, I might have the desperation to tell him all.
Besides, my darling, you know the interest I take in Miss Tomlinson. She is one of the brightest little spots on my hobby horse. Like all our servants, like everybody in my employ, she has been brought to my notice through the unhappy medium of the police court over which it is my destiny to preside. Our servant Wick is a man with a beautiful nature, is the son of a person I committed for trial for marrying 3 wives. To this day Wick is ignorant as to which of those 3 wives he is the son of. Cook was once a notorious dipsomaniac, and has even now not entirely freed herself from early influences. Popham is the unclaimed charge of a convicted baby farmer. Even our milkman came before me as a man who had refused to submit specimens to the analytic inspector. And this poor child, what is she?
Yes, I know.
The daughter of a superannuated general who abstracted 4 silk umbrellas from the army and navy stores. And on a fine day, too.
Beatty ceases playing.
Very good, very good.
Thank you, thank you.
Mr. Bullamy, to Mr. Poskett, coughing and laughing and popping a jujube into his mouth.
My dear Poskett, I really must congratulate you on that boy of yours, your stepson. A most wonderful lad. So confoundedly advanced, too.
Yes, isn't he, eh?
Mr. Bullamy, confidentially.
While the piano was going on just now, he told me one of the most humorous stories I've ever heard.
Laughing heartily and panting, then taking another jujube.
Ha ha! Bless me! I don't know when I've taken so many jujubes.
My dear Bullamy, my entire marriage is the greatest possible success. A little romantic, too.
Pointing to Agatha Poskett.
Beautiful woman.
Very, very. I never committed a more stylish, elegant creature.
Thank you, Bullamy. We met abroad at Spa when I was on my holiday.
Wyke enters with tea tray, which he hands round.
I shall go there next year.
She lost her first husband about 12 months ago in India. He was an army contractor.
Beatty, to Cis at the piano.
I must go now. There's no excuse for staying any longer.
Cis, to her, disconsolately.
What the deuce shall I do?
Mr. Poskett, pouring out milk.
Oh, dear me, this milk seems very poor. When he died, she came to England, placed her boy at a school in Brighton, and then moved about quietly from place to place, drinking.
Sips tea.
Drinking?
The waters. She's a little dyspeptic.
Wyke goes out.
We encountered each other at the Tour des Fontaines. By accident, I trod upon her dress.
Good night, Cis dear.
Oh.
Mr. Poskett, continuing to Mr. Bullamy.
I apologize. We talked about the weather. We drank out of the same glass, discovered that we both suffered from the same ailment, and the result is complete happiness.
He bends over Agatha Poskett gallantly.
Aeneas!
He kisses her, then Cis kisses Beatty loudly. Mr. Poskett and Mr. Bullamy both listen puzzled.
Echo?
Suppose so.
He kisses the back of his hand experimentally. Beatty kisses Sis.
Yes.
Curious.
To Mr. Bullamy.
A romantic story, isn't it?
Good night, Mrs. Poskett. I shall be here early tomorrow morning.
I am afraid you are neglecting your other pupils.
Oh, they're not so interesting as Master Farrington. Good night.
Good night, dear.
Beatty goes out quietly. Agatha Poskett joins Sis. Mr. Poskett to Mr. Bullamy.
We were married abroad without consulting friends or relations on either side. That's how it is I have never seen my sister-in-law, Miss Verinder, who is coming from Shropshire to stay with us. She ought to...
Wyke enters.
Miss Verinder has come, ma'am.
Here she is.
Charlotte.
Charlotte, a fine, handsome girl, enters, followed by Popham with hand luggage. Agatha Poskett kissing her.
My dear Charlie.
Wyke goes out.
Aggie, darling, aren't I late? There's a fog on the line. You could cut it with a knife.
Seeing Sis.
Is that your boy?
Yes.
Good gracious! What is he doing in an Eton jacket at his age?
Agatha Poskett softly to Charlotte.
Hush! Don't say a word about my boy's age yet awhile.
Oh!
Agatha Poskett about to introduce Mr. Poskett.
There is my husband.
Charlotte mistaking Mr. Bullamy for him.
Oh, how could she?
To Mr. Bullamy, turning her cheek to him.
I congratulate you. I suppose you ought to kiss me.
No, no.
Welcome to my house, Miss Verinder.
Oh, I beg your pardon. How do you do?
Mr. Bullamy to himself.
Mrs. Poskett's an interfering woman.
Mr. Poskett, pointing to Mr. Bullamy.
Mr. Bullamy.
Mr. Bullamy, aggrieved, bows stiffly. Agatha Poskett to Charlotte.
Come upstairs, dear. Will you have some tea?
No, thank you, Pat. But I should like a glass of soda water.
Soda water?
Well, dear, you can put what you like at the bottom of it.
Agatha Poskett and Charlotte go out, Popham following. Popham to Sis.
Give me back my bow bells when you've read it, you imp.
Goes out.
By Jove, Gov, isn't Aunt Charlotte a stunner?
Seems a charming woman.
Poskett's got the wrong one. That comes of marrying without first seeing the lady's relations.
Come along, Gov, let's have a gamble. Mr. Bullamy will join us.
Opens the card table, arranges chairs and candles.
A gamble?
Yes, the boy has taught me a new game called Fireworks. His mother isn't aware that we play for money, of course, but we do.
Ha ha ha! Who wins?
He does now, but he says I shall win when I know the game better.
What a boy he is!
Isn't he a wonderful lad, and only 14, too? I'll tell you something else. Perhaps you had better not mention it to his mother.
No, no, certainly not.
He's invested a little money for me.
What in?
Not in, on. On Silicon for the Lincolnshire Handicap. Silicon to win, and butterscotch 1, 2, 3.
Good Lord!
Yes, the dear boy said, Gov, it isn't fair that you should give me all the tips. I'll give you some. And so he did. He gave me silicon and butterscotch. He'll manage it for you if you like. Plank it down, he calls it.
Mr. Bullamy, chuckling and choking.
Ho, 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 ho!
Taking a jujube.
This boy will ruin me in jujubiz.
All ready? Look sharp. Gov, lend me a sieve to start with.
A sov to start with?
They sit at the table. Agatha Poskett and Charlotte come into the room.
We didn't think you would return so soon, my darling.
Go on amusing yourselves, I insist. Only don't teach my sis to play cards.
Ho, ho!
Mr. Poskett to Mr. Bellamy.
Hush, hush.
Agatha Poskett to Charlotte.
I am glad of this. We can tell each other our miseries undisturbed. Will you begin?
Well, at last I am engaged to Captain Horace Vale.
Oh, Charlie, I am so glad.
Yes, so is he says. He proposed to me at the hunt ball, in the passage, Tuesday week.
What did he say?
He said, "By Jove, I love you awfully."
Well, and what did you say?
Oh, I said, "Well, if you're going to be as eloquent as all that, by Jove, I can't stand out." So we settled it, in the passage. He bars flirting till after we're married. That's my misery. What's yours, Aggie?
Oh, something awful.
Cheer up, Aggie. What is it?
Well, Charlie, you know I lost my poor dear first husband at a very delicate age.
Well, you were 35, dear.
Yes, that's what I mean. 35 is a very delicate age to find yourself single. You're neither one thing nor the other. You're not exactly a 2-year-old, and you don't care to pull a hansom. However, I soon met Mr. Poskett at Spa. Bless him.
And you nominated yourself for the matrimonial stakes. Mr. Farrington's the widow. By bereavement, out of mourning, £10 extra.
Yes, Charlie, and in less than a month I went triumphantly over the course. But, Charlie dear, I didn't carry the fair weight for age, and that's my trouble.
Oh dear!
Undervaluing Aeneas' love, in a moment of, I hope, not unjustifiable vanity, I took 5 years from my total, which made me 31 on my wedding morning.
Well, dear, many a misguided woman has done that before you.
Yes, Charlie, but don't you see the consequences? It has thrown everything out. As I am now 31, instead of 36 as I ought to be, it stands to reason that I couldn't have been married 20 years ago, which I was. So I have had to fib in proportion.
I see. Making your first marriage occur only 15 years ago.
Exactly.
Well then, dear, why worry yourself further?
Why, dear, don't you see? If I am only 31 now, my boy couldn't have been born 19 years ago. And if he could, he oughtn't to have been, because on my own showing I wasn't married till 4 years later. Now you see the result.
Which is that fine, strapping young gentleman over there is only 14.
Precisely. Isn't it awkward? And his moustache is becoming more and more obvious every day.
What does the boy himself believe?
He believes his mother, of course, as a boy should. As a prudent woman, I always kept him in ignorance of his age, in case of necessity. But it is terribly hard on the poor child, because his aims, instincts, and ambitions are all so horribly in advance of his condition. His food, his books, his amusements are out of keeping with his palate, his brain, and his disposition. And with all this suffering, his wretched mother has the remorseful consciousness of having shortened her offspring's life.
Oh, come, you haven't quite done that.
Yes, I have, because if he lives to be 100, he must be buried at 95.
That's true.
Then there's another aspect. He's a great favourite with all our friends, women friends especially. Even his little music mistress and the girl servants hug and kiss him, because he's such an engaging boy, and I can't stop it. But it's very awful to see these innocent women fondling a young man of 19.
The women don't know it.
But they'd like to know it. I mean, they ought to know it. The other day I found my poor boy sitting on Lady Jenkins's lap, and in the presence of Sir George. I have no right to compromise Lady Jenkins in that way. And now, Charlie, you see the whirlpool in which I am struggling. If you can throw me a rope, pray do.
What sort of a man is Mr. Poskett, Aggie?
The best creature in the world. He's a practical philanthropist.
He's a police magistrate too, isn't he?
Yes, but he pays out of his own pocket half the fines he inflicts. That's why he has had a reprimand from the Home Office for inflicting such light penalties. All our servants have graduated at Mulberry Street. Most of the pictures in the dining room are genuine constables.
Take my advice. Tell him the whole story.
Oh, I dare not.
Why?
I should have to take such a backseat for the rest of my married life.
The party at the card table breaks up. Mr. Bullamy, grumpily.
No, thank you. Not another minute.
To Mr. Poskett.
What is the use of talking about revenge, my dear Poskett, when I haven't a penny piece left to play with?
I'm in the same predicament. Sis, will you lend us some money, won't you, Sis?
Rather.
No, thank ye. That boy is one too many for me. I've never met such a child. Good night, Mrs. Poskett.
Treads on a nut.
Confound the nuts.
Going so early?
Sis to Mr. Poskett.
I hate a bad loser, don't you, Gov?
Show Mr. Bullamy downstairs, Sis.
Good night, Poskett. Oh, I haven't a shilling left for my cabman.
I'll pay the cab.
No, thank you, I'll walk.
Opening jujube box.
Bah! Not even a jujube left. And on a foggy night, too. Ah!
Goes out. Entering Wyke with 4 letters on salver. Sis to Wyke.
Any for me?
1, sir.
Sis to himself.
From a sheer blonde. Lucky the mater didn't see it.
Goes out. Wyke hands letters to Agatha Poskett, who takes 2, then to Mr. Poskett, who takes 1.
This is for you, Charlie. Already.
Wyke goes out.
Spare my blushes, dear. It's from Horace, Captain Vale. The dear wretch knew I was coming to you. Heyo! Will you excuse me?
Certainly.
Excuse me, please.
Certainly, my dear.
Certainly, my darling. Excuse me, won't you?
Oh, certainly.
Certainly, Aeneas.
Simultaneously, they all open their letters and lean back and read. Agatha Poskett reading.
Lady Jenkins is not feeling very well.
If Captain Horace Vale stood before me at this moment, I'd slap his face.
Charlotte!
Charlotte reading.
Dear Miss Verinder, your desperate flirtation with Major Bristow at the meet on Tuesday last, 3 days after our engagement, has just come to my knowledge. Your letters and gifts, including the gold-headed hairpin given me at the hunt ball, shall be returned tomorrow. By Jove, all is over. Horace Vale. Oh, dear!
Oh, Charlie, I'm so sorry. However, you can deny it.
Charlotte weeping.
That's the worst of it. I can't.
Mr. Poskett to Agatha Poskett.
My darling, you will be delighted. A note from Colonel Lucan.
Lucan? Lucan? I seem to know the name.
An old schoolfellow of mine who went to India many years ago. He has just come home. I met him at the club last night and asked him to name an evening to dine with us. He accepts for tomorrow.
Lucan. Lucan.
Listen.
Reading.
It will be especially delightful to me, as I believe I am an old friend of your wife and of her first husband. You may recall me to her recollection by reminding her that I am the Captain Lucan who stood sponsor to her boy when he was christened at Baroda.
Ah!
My dear!
I've twisted my foot.
How do nuts come into the drawing-room?
Charlotte, quietly to Agatha Poskett.
Aggie?
Agatha Poskett to Charlotte.
The boy's godfather.
When was the child christened?
A month after he was born. They always are.
Mr. Poskett, reading the letter again.
This is very pleasant.
Agatha Poskett to Mr. Poskett.
Let me see the letter. I may recognize the handwriting.
Mr. Poskett handing her the letter.
Certainly, my pet.
To himself.
Awakened memories of number 1. That's the worst of marrying a widow. Somebody is always proving her previous convictions.
Agatha Poskett to Charlotte.
Number 19A, Cork Street. Charlie, put on your things and come with me.
Agatha, you're mad!
I'm going to shut this man's mouth before he comes into this house tomorrow.
Wait till he comes.
Yes, till he stalks in here with his, "How d'ye do, Poskett? Haven't seen your wife since the year 66, by God, sir." Not I. Aeneas.
My dear.
Lady Jenkins, Adelaide is very ill. She can't put her foot to the ground with neuralgia.
Taking the letter from her pocket and giving it to him.
Ah, bless me.
We have known each other for 6 long years.
Only 6 weeks, my love.
Weeks are years in close friendship. My place is by her side.
Mr. Poskett reading the letter.
Slightly indisposed, caught trifling cold at the dog show. Where do you buy your handkerchiefs? And nothing about neuralgia or putting her foot to the ground here, my darling.
No, but can't you read between the lines, Aeneas? That is the letter of a woman who is not at all well.
All right, my darling, if you are bent upon going, I will accompany you.
Certainly not, Aeneas. Charlotte insists on being my companion. We can keep each other warm in a closed cab.
But can't I make a third?
Don't be so forgetful, Aeneas. Don't you know that in a 4-wheeled cab, the fewer knees there are, the better?
Agatha Poskett and Charlotte go out. Cis comes in hurriedly.
What's the matter, Gov?
Your mother and Miss Verinder are going out.
Out of their minds? It's a horrid night.
Yes, but Lady Jenkins is ill.
Oh? Is Ma mentioned in the will?
Good gracious, what a boy. No, Cis, your mother is merely going to sit by Lady Jenkins' bedside, to hold her hand and to tell her where one goes to buy pocket handkerchiefs.
By Jove, the mater can't be home again till 12:30 or 1 o'clock.
Much later if Lady Jenkins' condition is alarming.
Hooray!
He takes the watch out of Mr. Poskett's pocket.
Just 10:30. Greenwich mean, eh, Gov?
He puts the watch to his ear, pulling Mr. Poskett towards him by the chain.
What an extraordinary lad.
Cis returning watch.
Thanks. They have to get from here to Camden Hill and back again. I'll tell White to get them the worst horse on the rank.
My dear child.
3/4 of an hour's journey from here at least. Twice 3/4, 1 hour and a half, an hour with Lady Jenkins. When women get together, you know, Gov, they do talk. That's 2 hours and a half. Good. Gov, will you come with me?
Go with you? Where?
Hotel des Princes, Meek Street. A sharp, handsome decision, 10 minutes.
Meek Street, Hotel des Princes. Child, do you know what you're talking about?
Rather. Look here, Gov. Honour bright. No blab if I show you a letter?
I won't promise anything.
You won't? Do you know, Gov, you are doing a very unwise thing to check the confidence of a lad like me.
Cis, my boy.
Can you calculate the inestimable benefit it is to a youngster to have someone always at his elbow, someone older, wiser, and better off than himself?
Of course, Cis, of course. I want you to make a companion of me.
Then how the deuce can I do that if you won't come with me to Meek Street?
Yes, but deceiving your mother.
Deceiving the mater would be to tell her a crammer, a thing I hope we're both of us much above.
Good boy, good boy.
Concealing the fact that we're going to have a bit of supper at the Hotel des Princes is doing my mother a great kindness, because it would upset her considerably to know of the circumstances. You've been wrong, Gov, but we won't say anything more about that. Read the letter.
Gives Mr. Poskett the letter. Mr. Poskett, reading in a dazed sort of way.
Hotel des Princes, Meek Street. Dear sir. Unless you drop in and settle your arrears, I really cannot keep your room for you any longer. Yours obediently, Achille Blonde, Cecil Farrington, Esquire. Good heavens! You have a room at the Hotel des Princes?
A room? It's little better than a coop.
You don't occupy it?
But my friends do. When I was at Brighton, I was in with the best set. Hope I always shall be. I left Brighton. Nice hole I was in. You see, Gov, I didn't want my friends to make free with your house.
Oh, didn't you?
So I took a room at the Hotel des Princes. When I want to put a man up, he goes there. You see, Gov, it's you I've been considering more than myself.
But you are a mere child.
A fellow is just as old as he feels. I feel no end of a man. Hush! They're coming down. I'm off to tell Wyke about the rickety four-wheeler.
Sis, your mother will discover I have been out.
Oh, I forgot. You're married, aren't you?
Married.
So you are going to the club?
But that's not the truth, sir.
Yes, it is. We'll pop in at the club on our way, and you can give me a bitters.
Goes out.
Good gracious, what a boy! Hotel des Princes, Meek Street. What shall I do? Tell his mother? Why, it would turn her hair gray. If I could only get a quiet word with this Mr. Achille Blonde, I could put a stop to everything. That is my best course, not to lose a moment in rescuing the child from his boyish indiscretion. Yes, I must go with Sis to Meek Street.
Enter Agatha Poskett and Charlotte, elegantly dressed.
Have you sent for a cab, Aeneas?
Sis is looking after that.
Poor Sis. How late we keep him up.
Sis comes in.
Wyke is gone for a cab, my dear.
Thank you, Sis, darling.
If you'll excuse me, I'll go to my room. I've another bad headache coming on.
Agatha Poskett kissing him.
Run along, my boy.
Good night, Ma. Good night, Aunt Charlotte.
Good night, Sis.
Agatha Poskett to herself.
I wish the cab would come.
Agatha Poskett and Charlotte look out of the window. Sis at the door.
Good night, Gov.
You've told the story, too, sir. You said you were going up to your room.
So I am. To dress.
You said you had a bad headache coming on.
So I have, Gov. I always get a bad headache at the Hotel des Princes.
Goes out.
What a boy.
Agatha Poskett to herself.
When will that cab come?
My pet, the idea has struck me that, as you are going out, it would not be a bad notion for me to pop into my club.
The club? You were there last night.
I know, my darling. Many men look in at their clubs every night.
A nice example for Sis, truly. I particularly desire that you should remain at home tonight, Aeneas.
Mr. Poskett to himself.
Oh, dear me.
Charlotte to Agatha Poskett.
Why not let him go to the club, Agatha?
He might meet Colonel Lukin there.
If Colonel Lukin is there, we shan't find him in Cork Street.
Then we follow him to the club.
Ladies never call at a club.
Such things have been known.
Wyke enters. Wyke grinning behind his hand.
The cab is coming, ma'am.
Coming? Why didn't you bring it with you?
I walk quicker than the cab, ma'am. It's a good horse, slow, but very certain.
We will come down.
Wyke to himself.
Just what the horse has done.
To Agatha Poskett.
Yes, ma'am.
Wyke goes out.
Good night, Aeneas.
Mr. Poskett nervously.
I wish you would allow me to go to the club, my pet.
Aeneas, I am surprised at your obstinacy. It is so very different from my first husband.
Really, Agatha, I am shocked. I presume the late Mr. Farrington occasionally used his clubs?
Indian clubs. Indian clubs are good for the liver. London clubs are not. Good night.
I'll see you to your cab, Agatha.
No, thank you.
Upon my word.
Charlotte to Agatha Poskett.
Why not?
He would want to give the direction to the cabman.
The first tiff.
To Mr. Poskett.
Good night, Mr. Poskett.
Good night, Miss Verinder.
Agatha Poskett to Mr. Poskett.
Have you any message for Lady Jenkins?
Confound Lady Jenkins.
I will deliver your message in the presence of Sir George, who, I may remind you, is the permanent secretary at the Home Office.
Agatha Poskett and Charlotte go out. Mr. Poskett paces up and down excitedly.
I'm not going to the club. I set a bad example to Sis. Ha ha ha! I am different from her first husband. Yes, I am. I'm alive for one thing. I'm dashed if I don't go out with the boy.
Sis, putting his head in at the door.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a, Gov? All right.
Enters Sis in fashionable evening dress, carrying Mr. Poskett's overcoat and hat.
Here are your hat and overcoat.
Where on earth did you get that dress suit?
Mum's the word, Gov. Brighton Taylor, 6 months' credit. He promised to send in the bill to you, so the mater won't know.
Putting Mr. Poskett's hat on his head.
By Jove, Gov, don't my togs show you up?
I won't go. I won't go. I've never met such a boy before.
Sis proceeds to help him with his overcoat.
Mind your arm, Gov. You've got your hand in a pocket. No, that's a tear in the lining. That's it.
I forbid you to go out.
Yes, Gov, and I forbid you to eat any of those devilled oysters we shall get at the Hotel de France. Now you're right.
I am not right.
Oh, I forgot.
He pulls out a handful of loose money.
I found this money in your desk, Gov. You had better take it out with you. You may want it. Here you are. Gold, silver, and coppers.
He empties the money into Mr. Poskett's overcoat pocket.
One last precaution, and then we're off.
Goes to the writing table and writes on a half sheet of note paper.
I shall take a turn round the square, and then come home again. I will not be influenced by a mere child. A man of my responsible position, a magistrate, supping slyly at the Hotel des Princes in Meek Street. It is horrible.
Now then, we'll creep downstairs quietly so as not to bring Wyke from his pantry.
Giving Mr. Poskett paper.
You stick that up prominently while I blow out the candles.
Sis blows out the candles on the piano. Mr. Poskett reading.
Your master and Mr. Cecil Farrington are going to bed. Don't disturb them. I will not be a partner to any written document. This is untrue.
No, it isn't. We are going to bed when we come home. Make haste, Gov.
Ah, what a boy.
Pinning the paper onto the curtain. Sis, turning down the lamp and watching Mr. Poskett.
Hello, Gov. Hello. You're an old hand at this sort of game, are you?
How dare you?
Sis, taking Mr. Poskett's arm.
Now then, don't breathe.
Mr. Poskett quite demoralized.
Sis, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Hold up, Gov.
Wyke enters.
Oh, bother.
Wyke to Mr. Poskett.
Going out, sir?
Mr. Poskett, struggling to be articulate.
Yes, that is, partially, half round the square and possibly, back again.
To Sis.
Oh, you bad boy.
Wyke, coolly going up to the paper on curtains.
Shall I take this down now, sir?
Mr. Poskett, quietly to Sis.
I'm in an awful position. What am I to do?
Do as I do. Tip him.
What?
Tip him.
Oh, yes, yes. Where's my money?
Sis takes 2 coins out of Mr. Poskett's pocket and gives them to him without looking at them. Sis to Mr. Poskett.
Give him that.
Yes.
And say, Wyke, you want a new umbrella? Buy a very good one. Your mistress has a latchkey, so go to bed.
Wick.
Yes, sir?
Mr. Poskett, giving him money.
Go to bed. Buy a very good one. Your mistress has a latchkey, so you want a new umbrella.
All right, sir. You can depend on me. Are you well muffled up, sir? Mind you take care of him, Master Sis.
Sis, supporting Mr. Poskett. Mr. Poskett groaning softly.
Capital, gov, capital. Are you hungry?
Hungry? You're a wicked boy. I've told a falsehood.
No, you haven't, gov. He really does want a new umbrella.
Does he, sis? Does he? Thank heaven.
They go out. Wyke, looking at money.
Here. What? 2pence?
Throws the coins down in disgust.
I'll tell the missus.
End of the first act.